because if you lead in a way that motivates your teams, that inspires rather than controls, that's when you have engaged employees. That's when they want to go above and beyond. That's when they're thinking creatively, because they're not terrified
Hmm.
and they feel a purpose. They feel aligned with your mission, because they're being treated well and with respect. So I want to teach people how to do that, how to
Yeah.
influence, how to have human first leadership that drives high performing teams. And I do believe that will trickle up in terms of influence because it just earns more money.
It, do-
So that's
it,
my philosophy right now.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer Success. Today, my guest is Rachel Provan. Rachel is a top 25 customer success leader and the founder of Provan Success, where she provides brain-based leadership and career coaching. She helps first-time managers become respected leaders of high-performing teams by fusing human psychology with practical leadership strategies. Rachel is also a brave podcast host, as she is the host of the popular Psychology of Customer Success. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We are excited to have you here. I've been dying to talk a little bit more customer success with people. And this is a great opportunity to get into some great advice, some great leadership advice. And I've seen a lot of your work. I've been reading a lot of your work and I've read a bunch of your posts. And I want to get right to it. But, usually we get right to it. But sometimes I want to take a step back and have the audience get to know you a little bit. So, I was looking into your background. I know you said when you first became a manager, you felt like you're playing a role rather than really
Hmm.
leading. So can you take us back to that time and that moment, what was going through your mind and what was the turning point for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I was pretty young. I was in my in my mid 20s, mid to late 20s, when I first became a manager, and I was an amazing individual contributor, and that's kind of why they promoted me, I guess. But I had no idea how to be a manager. I can say without bias that I absolutely sucked. Um, I had this idea of what a manager is supposed to be, right? They're supposed to absolutely know what they're doing at all times. They're supposed to, have executive presence. They're supposed to be commanding. They're supposed to be very, very confident. I had a view that was very much, I think somehow from like the 1950s, although I'm definitely younger than that. But it was just very like, white 1950s male, middle aged leader. And of all those things, I'm white, and that's about the rest, and the rest I was not. So I was trying to emulate what I thought leadership looked like, but me trying to act like a white middle aged man from the 50s, predictably perhaps, came across really freaking weird. um, because it's not me. It
It's
would,
not
I
you,
was just
right?
weird. I was weird and awkward. And I see a lot of people do this. So I did what a lot of new managers do. I vacillated back and forth between, um, wanting to be the cool boss, right? Like that boss that everyone has, like, man, they're cool. Like, I don't have to worry about anything. I go with them because they're cool and I'm not going to do anything bad because I respect them. I don't, they're fair with me. I'm going to be fair with them. So I tried to kind of like be everyone's friend. Um, and what was happening there was I just really wasn't being clear at all.
Hmm.
Uh, so people would be like, all right, I'd give someone an assignment, or I'd be like, you can take a long lunch. Don't worry about it. I don't really care about these things. And then all of a sudden they'd be taking like 2, 3 hour lunches. And it's like, okay, I was thinking more like 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
10.
Yeah. And then
Right.
like, you're the jerk if you're like, well, I didn't mean it that way. Um, so I was doing things like that. I was avoiding difficult conversations. Um, and so I was going back and forth between trying to be that cool boss and, um, no one had ever trained me how to be a manager. So the only
Right.
thing I understood was, well, they promoted me because I'm really good at my IC role. So to be successful, all I have to do is teach everybody to do things exactly the way I did it because it's really successful. and then we'll all be successful and we all win. Yay. Everybody should want to learn my way because clearly it's the best. Guess what? People don't like that. They've been
No,
there before you. And they probably have their own way. And if they haven't gotten fired, it's probably good enough. Like, not say it can't be improved, but you can't go in being like, everyone's going to do it my way now.
right.
And, so I was really, out of my mind. I was not being who I was. My confidence was shot because I had complete imposter syndrome because I had no idea what a manager really did to be successful. And I thought I had to be on top of every single thing at every moment.
Right.
And none of that was true. Finally I got some training. I learned a lot of things the hard way, the slow way. Um, but
Was it
yeah,
slow, or was there a red light that went on and you said, "Oh man, I need help," or was it just kind of slowly but surely
it,
the
a
you started to see the light
combination.
at the end of the tunnel? Yeah.
A combination because I didn't want to I definitely felt like, oh my god, this is nothing like what I thought it would be, and I think I might actually suck at this. um and
And
it's
how
like,
can that
who
be?
knew?
Because you're so fabulous as an
Well, I
IC,
know
right?
I didn't think I was so fabulous or anything, but it's like I'm
But
really good with people. I've
right.
always been really good with people. I care about them. I've always seemed very, it honestly was kind of like when I became a mother, and I'm a very maternal person. Everyone always thinks I'm very maternal. And then when I had a baby, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Everyone told me I was maternal. What the hell, man? So just not knowing how to handle it instinctually made me think that I was terrible at it in both those
Yeah.
circumstances, when in fact it's just a new role that you have to learn. And thank God in motherhood, there are lots of women who are like, I gotcha. Come here. I'll tell you what to do.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
is not so much the case in leadership.
Management and leadership,
The
no.
piece of advice I hear most often is, just fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And that's terrible advice,
Right.
you know?
I was just gonna
Um,
say, fake it till you make it doesn't really work, everybody.
that
So
is not a good strategy, folks.
not strategy.
That's the long, hard way. But also, you don't, when you have imposter syndrome and you feel like you're failing, you don't really want to talk to your boss and be like, hi, I think I suck at my
Yeah,
job.
yeah, oh,
You
true.
think you're going to lose it.
Right. Or at least
And it's like,
position yourself for right
right,
for that loss, or just not future, lack of future
exactly,
growth. So
exactly.
yeah, no, certainly the other misconception that people have is leadership can't be learned, because people,
Yes,
you're a natural
born
born leader as a
leader,
leader and all that, and
please.
there's no, you know in the DNA sequencing, there's nothing in there, in the genome or whatever it's called. And it can be learned. Now, people have natural tendencies. They might be more
Yeah.
inclined to it, just like anything else, whether it's, playing a sport or singing. You might have some natural ability and take it, but you do have to learn it. It can be learned, and you can get better at it. And,
Hmm.
I've coached leadership and I've been coached, and you can get better at it. But I think people miss that. They think more of the management and maybe managing tasks and people, and they don't think of that leadership
Hmm.
aspect of it. And it is not taught often, and is not taught well in most
Well,
cases.
yeah,
And that's where you come in.
it is. It is indeed.
and,
Hopefully.
and, and is that, I mean, is that, obviously that's what sparked you to start your
Yes.
Provan Success, but I'm sure that was a long way down the road, right? So
God, yeah.
yeah, so tell us, kind of drive us forward, and to the current, and how you came to launching your own business, and what really motivated you to do that.
Oh, you want my villain origin story? Uh,
Yeah.
not, I couldn't be a villain if I tried, but I'd be like, oh God, they're gonna catch me. Um, so yeah, I've been working since I was 12, honestly. But I was in customer success for a very long time. About 18 years, 15 of them in leadership. And of course, a lot of it was before it was even called customer success, but it's exactly what I was doing. And I did some of it instinctually. Um, which is actually how I got promoted from like manager to VP. Again, like still in my 20s, because we had kind of an initial theory of like garbage in, garbage out. And my thought was, okay, I get that. I totally do. But what if instead We didn't. And we tried to help the client have the best thing out there that they could. You know, what if we showed them where they were making mistakes, or gave a longer timeline so we could intercede, or gave them a checklist, you know, just little things to help them succeed with us rather than being like, I did what you gave me. And when that worked, you know, that got me promoted. Um, and, you know, we all adopted that philosophy for the wider group that I was on. And that was really cool. And, you know, again, that's the idea of customer success without it being called that at the time. So I was in customer success from, well, let's not get into that, for a long time. And around 2022 is when I switched over to, to coaching. So, you know, after 15 years in leadership, I actually did know what I was talking about. I had gotten myself educated. I'd gotten some coaching, some programs, things like that. Um, and in addition, the fact that I've always been a huge student of psychology, that has been incredibly beneficial, because I was always thinking like, why do people do that? Why do I do that? That doesn't make sense, you know, but especially other people. Why aren't they following my script? You're making no sense. Why don't people see it the way I do? So really learning to understand them, actually helped me be a much better leader, because I could think about, all right, well, what does this person really want? You know, rather than here's what I want and you need to do it. I was able to lean into, okay, here's what motivates people. Here's what motivates this person. Um, they're probably not sitting around thinking about how to ruin my day. They're probably not lazy. Everyone wants to do a good job. You know, maybe I can approach it from, how could we make this a win-win? Or what do they really care about? So that was a large part of what made me good at my job wherever I was. Um, Things in CS have existed on a pendulum for a long time. You know, it went from like, we're an extension of your team, to the happiness department, which I always hated, to, you know, to outcomes, which I am a fan of, to, you know, well, we sell now, which, you know, pros and cons.
Right.
But it had gotten to a point where, I was getting fairly frustrated with both the culture. And I've worked in startups mainly. I've worked in some Fortune 500 companies as well, but mainly startups. And I was getting frustrated with just the, you need to do everything now, because we've been on this continuum and picking up more pieces along the whole way, that, I was just kind of getting tired of having the same arguments with people. Uh, I got to the point where I knew how to influence the C-suite, but it's not going to be one conversation. It's going to be a conversation that you have to have over and over and over. I call it pushing a rock up a hill. At the same time,
the Sisyphus Award, I think.
Exactly. Oh, very good. You know your Greek. So the pushing a rock up a hill, I was tired of it. I had just had a couple short stints in a row, which I know a lot of people are going through right now. And I was really frustrated, and I was like, you know, I'd been through two really toxic, environments, one right after the other, and it really affected my mental and physical health. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to be really intentional about the next job I take. I'm not just going to take whoever will have me. I'm not just going to take the highest performing or the fanciest sounding title. Like, I really have to make sure this fits with me, because this is like really affecting my life. And I was like, all right, I see a gap. I see that no one is teaching anyone how to do this, and I'm seeing people make the same mistakes over and over. And while I was a leader, I had a tendency to create what I called mini directors. I ended up teaching a lot of individual contributors, you know, how to become managers, directors, if that's what they wanted to do. I taught them how to take on more responsibility, what you do in that role, etc. And everywhere I went, people got promoted. People were able to take over my role and get promoted and do a great job and continue on past me. And I was like, all right, so I'm kind of good at that, and I really like it. What if I just do that, a little bit on the side while I'm being intentional about my next role? And I did already have a little bit of an audience on LinkedIn, because I had just been writing on there since 2020, so about 2 years. because I really liked writing. I didn't know I was going to do anything. I just liked writing, liked talking about CS. Um, and I built up a little bit of a following. So when I put it out there that like, hey, I'm taking on a few people for coaching, um, I did get a response, which is not very common because it's a lot more saturated. Like there
Yeah,
wasn't a
sure.
customer success leadership coach, like success coaching did some. But there wasn't really much one-on-one. There wasn't there, theirs was a live thing. Mine was a cohort. It all just very different. But it certainly wasn't, um, saturated to the extent it is now. It's like, I don't see anywhere that people are being taught how you build and scale a customer success department, how you act as a manager. And I kept seeing this mismatch between, especially at startups, what executives expected from customer success and how fast that could happen, like what's really involved. And what would happen is they would hire these people who had never been a customer success leader before, and they've never had customer success before. And they'd be like, all right, so you can get us to like, you know, 110 NRR in 6 months, right? And, we've got you a Google sheet, and the new person would be like, absolutely I can, because they
You
want the
should.
job and they don't know better.
Right.
And everyone ends up feeling like it's a colossal failure. And what really happened was it was the blind leading the blind. But it was damaging to CS, and it was incredibly damaging to these poor young leaders. And I was seeing them over and over. This really colored my messaging and my teaching over time because I just kept seeing this happening. And I was like, this is terrible. So after doing one-on-one and seeing that so much, I was like, all right, I've worked with enough of you that I see what we need now. I see the common problems. I see what you need to learn, the conversations you need to have. And I was able to build something that then consistently was able to get people, to get their companies to understand customer success, to understand the value, to increase their patience, even if they have to keep having the conversation. But the funny thing was, I was like, this is a part-time gig till I find something else. And then all of a sudden I was like, I have 15 clients, like 15 one-on-one weekly clients, which don't ever do. Um, like I really almost burned out. But I was like, I couldn't take a job now if I wanted to because, I wouldn't have time. And so I said to my husband, look, I'm making okay money, like scrape by money right now. Can I just see what I can do with this? And thankfully he was very supportive. He's like, yeah, I mean, you're making money. So, go for it. You can always get a job again later. People like you, like people know about you. Fine. Um, and yeah, and it kind of took off, and I doubled my corporate salary within a year.
Wow.
Again, that's not something that happens most of the time. Having an audience for a while first really helps.
That's right.
Being first to market really helps. Um, but yeah, it really took off, and the impact is really what's been so incredibly important to me.
That's wonderful. That is a great story because I've always thought the same thing. Now, we don't call it customer success and investment servicing. It's basically the same thing,
Yeah.
but there is a lack of structure and a lack of training. And I'm
Hmm.
someone who's trained somebody my whole career, no matter where I've been.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing it from, all right, here's how I think it should be done in here. But I've enjoyed teaching people, and I've been fairly effective, but there isn't anything else, right? Usually.
Right.
So this is why when I find people like you out there, I'm instantly saying, oh gosh, I'd really want to talk to her about, how she does this, because I've seen your post and I said, boom, it's the same kind
Hmm.
of feeling that I've had throughout my career. And, we have some very smart people and very dedicated people, and very client focused people, but I always feel like no matter where I've been, and I've had two different, large asset servicing firms and two investment companies, and we do it well. It's not a knock on anybody, but it could be better because it's not
Yeah.
quite as organized as it could be. And we struggle with the same things, like who does what, who owns the revenue, and how do we don't use the word churn so much because it's not as much
Right.
of a quick turnover, maybe a little bit more with investment management than in asset servicing, but it's the same kind of thing. So I've always, thought about there being a structure and somebody should be coaching us. And well, there you are. So that is
Ta-da.
great stuff. So I've got so many different directions I want to take this conversation, but let's go back to kind of your philosophy.
Hmm.
And I think the question I want to get to is, you emphasize teaching how to think like a leader, not just what to do, right? And when I used to
Correct.
train people, I used to always say to them, I think we're saying the same thing. It's more important to understand than it is to know what button to push. I'll teach you what buttons do, And then when you understand, you're just going to know what button to push. So it's the same kind of thing, right? I
Hmm.
think. Yeah.
Very, very similar. And it, maybe if you are an engineer, it's different, right? Because you literally are, it's yes or no. It's right or wrong. It's black and white. You type this in and it makes the computer do that thing. It's binary,
Right.
right? Um, and my whole thing with my podcast and the way I approach all of this is that humans are not logical. They're not binary. Uh, we like to think we are, but the way our brains actually work is wired for survival. And it's worked very well, but there are a lot of shortcuts that happen to make that work. And we're most of the time protecting ourselves rather than doing what's optimal for the business, right? Whether we realize it or not, some of that's subconscious, but it's the reason that, people get touchy about it. If you're like, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that project. They're not thinking like, oh, yeah, they're not angry because you can't help them with the project. They're angry because, do you think you're more important than I am? Oh my God, do other people think you're more important than I am? Oh my God, people don't think I'm important. I'm going to get fired. You're not more
Mm-hmm.
important than I am. So this is how they're all of a sudden getting worked up about that. It's not logical. People constantly feel under threat because their job is tied to survival. It's tied to how you get your food. It's tied to how you get your shelter. So understanding all of that, um, just saying, push this button here, dummy, is not going to get it done. In the same way that just telling clients, you know, oh, you wanted the product. The general idea from the C-suite is often they wanted the product, they bought the product, we showed them how to use the product. What the hell is the problem? Why do we need
Right.
you? And it's like,
Product's wonderful. It's
yeah.
right.
I have a consistent analogy that I use on this, which is, do you know how many gym memberships I bought and how many times I've had a six pack?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when I was 5, I don't know, but hasn't happened because of a gym membership. And it's nothing wrong with the gym. I start out all excited to go, but the results aren't instant. It hurts. Typically I do it in January because I'm a sucker and, it's cold outside or I'm tired or this isn't working anyway. That's how humans really work. We hate change. We hate anything new. We want the results, but we don't particularly want to have to work for it.
Mm-hmm.
And doing anything new feels a little bit risky because what I've done to now hasn't gotten me fired. Right.
Right.
So that's where all the complicated stuff in customer success comes. That's the philosophy we look at. Now, you have to understand that at the same time, understand the frameworks that are the logical part of it. Like, this is how you build and scale a customer success department so that it works. Like, it can't all be psychology or we're just going to sit around and have our feelings, right? But you have to marry this is how we put the blocks together in what order. These are the IKEA instructions with, okay,
Yeah.
I see how you're getting resistant to this and we're going to pause and we're going to go back and we're going to reestablish psychological safety and understand what's really going on here. But this is why I do the coaching. This is why it's not just a digital course and I'm not like sitting on an island because that doesn't
Right.
really happen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But this is why I still show up and I still coach people because I can give you the exact right way to do it, but other people's emotions and your own way of interpreting things are always going to come along and gum things up. Right. So that's why we have the coaching aspects of it. So we have the very logical frameworks. And then we have all right, you could have looked this stuff up on the internet. Here's how to make it work in the real world with humans that are messy and where CS isn't the first priority.
So let's take it back a little bit to what we're talking about, the toxic environment. And we're
Yes.
talking a little bit about fear and how fear drives much of the toxic behavior. So, and I think we've all witnessed that. So how do you help break that cycle? How do you help
Mm-hmm.
leaders learn? I mean, you've just touched on it, but maybe you could take it a step
Yeah. Oh,
further and
absolutely.
how don't pass it along, right? Is kind of what we're
Right.
getting at.
And thank you for that beautiful, step right up onto my soapbox. Um, you know, I've talked to you about how I got started in this, but it used to be like, oh, people need to learn how to be customer success leaders. No one's teaching people. Whereas now what it's really about for me is the idea that more and more, I really think corporate America has gotten emotionally abusive, if I'm honest. You know, people aren't treated like humans. They're not treated with respect. They're treated like cogs in a machine. And there's this attitude of like, well, you better work more than what we're paying for and do it with a smile because there's 15 people lined up down this or 100 people lined up down the street that'll take your job tomorrow for half price. Um,
Hmm.
that is not the best way to get people's best work.
Right.
Um, and just being like, oh, well, I can get it for cheaper again. I can use AI, which doesn't need a nap. Good luck with
Mm.
that.
Yeah, good luck with the
It,
AI.
yeah, exactly. And I love AI. I use it, but there's just no respect, no autonomy, no purpose. And the truth is, humans still drive business, humans who are buying from you, not machines. So until all of this is done by machines talking to other machines, you better know how to influence people in a positive way. So that's why I'm very much about human first leadership. And I really believe the root cause of this does come down to bad leadership and does come down to fear because people are just trying not to go under, right? And we are not logical when we're like, oh God, my finances are at risk. My company is at risk. I've got to keep feeding these people. I have people who work for me. We're just not making the most logical decisions. And it's not that any of these people are bad leaders are bad people. They just were never taught how to lead in a positive way. They're told fake it till you make it. And that, as you saw with me, it leads to micromanagement. It leads to burnout and it leads to teams that stop trying and stop caring. So my belief is that if you change leadership at the source, it's not going to trickle down. We see that trickle down anything doesn't work. I'm talking about trickle up because if you lead in a way that motivates your teams, that inspires rather than controls, um, that's when you have engaged employees. That's when they want to go above and beyond. That's when they're thinking creatively, because they're not terrified
Hmm.
and they feel a purpose. They feel aligned with your mission, because they're being treated well and with respect. And when you have that, it's been shown in study after study that companies make more exponentially when their employees have high employee engagement, as in like they feel great about their job, they feel great about their company, they feel good about how they're being treated, that there's opportunity there. So the fact is, everyone wants to do the right thing. Everyone wants to treat people well. Most people don't know how to do it and still get the results that they know that they have to. So I want to teach people how to do that, how to
Yeah.
influence, how to have human first leadership that drives high performing teams. And I do believe that will trickle up in terms of influence because it just earns more money. So that's my philosophy right now.
That is a wonderful philosophy, and I'm just thrilled you've shared that with everyone. I guess my question is, why do we think it's so hard to sell this and sell the value of not only that mindset and that approach, and even the value of client teams or client experience or customer success teams? It
Mm-hmm,
there is study after study, and there is data to demonstrate this, but I feel like I have this conversation with everybody. Why is it
mm-hmm.
so goddamn hard?
I did a whole deep dive on heuristics, like the mistakes that your brain makes from the shortcuts that we have. Just all the things it's processing, why that happens, what specific mistakes happen, which are, sure, cognitive biases. It's
Mm,
really the cognitive biases and the evolutionary psychology, because no one is thinking long term, right? No one, our instincts are not, well, I'm going to max out my 401k because that's going to be great for my retirement. It's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be around in 50 years. Like, I hope so. I don't want to
The new
retire at
car
90.
sound
Good God.
the
Yeah.
new car sounds
Um,
better than max out the
yeah, it's
401k.
like, well, this I need now. And
Right.
add that to the fact that there has been more and more financial insecurity as I've grown up. Like the older I get, the worse it gets, like the worse the wealth inequality gets. Like I can't buy a house. Are you kidding me? Um, and that's crazy that I can't buy a house and that it was, like, I don't know how I'm going to send my kids to college. I'm going to be the first one in my family not to buy a house. That's not right? And I'm earning fairly well. But if I wanted to stay where I am, I'd have to spend multi-million dollars. That's crazy. So we're not in a logical situation where we can think logically and everyone feels like their survival is at risk if they don't get the number. And
Right.
so they're focused on that. And it's like, I need this fast. I don't have time to wait for your long-term solution. Absolutely. That's great. And I support it, but it just can't be my priority right now. It
Yeah.
sounds great. Maybe in 2 years, right? That's why I call CS is the broccoli of, of the business world. Like we all know it's good for us. We all know we need it, but
Right.
it's not particularly sexy. No
It's
one's like, yeah, give me that broccoli. I'm going to
it,
prioritize that for dinner, but you can't all of a sudden wait until, your teeth are falling out and then be like, no, 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 I'm going to eat broccoli now. It's like, dude, you missed the
uh,
broccoli window.
I was just gonna say,
This is a
yeah, we're
long,
like
slow thing.
flossing. We're also
Yeah,
the flossing of
exactly.
the business
And
world. It's
see,
you should be doing it, but
I
yeah,
happen to like broccoli. I don't particularly love flossing. I do it, but like, it's not painful. This isn't painful, but it's a little boring and and it's
it's effort.
slow. And, that's why I think CS has gone so commercial now and why it's so much about like push the upsell, that it's turned into account management, which there's a reason there's both, because with
Right.
account management and no CS, you tend to have 20 to 30% churn. So good luck, folks, with that playing out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I do believe you can upsell, but you have to hit the desired outcome first, right? It can't just be assumed that it's going to happen or that it has happened because you showed someone how to use the product. So it's difficult with the founder. It's difficult with the product people because by saying, this is not automatically going to be successful with people, with 20 to 30% of the people who buy it, they feel like you're calling their baby ugly when that could not be further from the truth. It's like, this is with a great product that does what it's supposed to do, where you've done no forward selling. You're probably doing a little forward selling. You probably have some bugs. If you're working agile and building to 80%, that's not going to go so well down the line. And there is the issue in that, people have taken customer success and been like, well, you're solely responsible for retention. And I think it's good that we're responsible for retention in the sense of having a number to tie it to. I think it is the best indicator of whether the customer has achieved their goals, which to me is the point. But we can only do that if everything before that has been done correctly.
Right.
Like we're at the end of the assembly line. If people screwed it up before, we can't fix it at the
You
very
can't
end.
you can't go
It's
back
not
in time and
possible.
fix it. Right.
Right.
You can't close your eyes and
It's
make it go away.
exactly like we can't fix horrible onboarding that happened 9 months before we got there in the last 2 months of the contract.
Mhm.
Like they're like, we moved on 10 months ago. I don't even know who you are.
We well, that's it. One of the things I learned early on that I always kept with me, and I think I've mentioned a couple times, is I learned that excellent service is reminding the client why you hired them in the first place every day from day one, right? So
Yep.
you're not in that position where, and you have you with retention, the contracts coming up. Me in my world, that they're going out to RFP.
Oh
Sometimes
God,
it's
RFP. Yeah.
yeah, well, that's my world. Is more RFP than
Been there.
the
Been there.
renewals,
Yeah.
and so that's your mindset should always be just that. Like you've
Yeah.
got to prove it every day. That is why you're here.
Can you imagine
And
if marriage had to go through that every year?
that would
We'd be in such trouble.
uh, that's great. I gotta share that with my wife when she gets
Uh-huh.
home. So yeah, renewal that'd be awesome. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
goodness, that is true. That is a great point. Sorry, that one threw me for a loop. I haven't thought of that one.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, let's keep rolling because we got to hit the
Yeah.
segments in a minute. I'm gonna have one more for you. This now I almost put this in the chip shots, but this is it's just specific to you. But I'm just gonna throw it here at the end of the basic interview section. If you could give a message to every first time manager listening right now that might be struggling, what would it be?
Oof. You don't have to be someone else to be a good manager. The person that you already are, leaning into that is going to make you a far better manager than anything that you might think that you're supposed to be. Be yourself, care about other people, try and help them hit their goals, and you're going to do okay. But no one was born knowing how to do this. It's okay to suck a little bit, and it's okay to ask for help.
That's awesome. That is brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Let's hit the segments.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time for Does It Hold Water, my favorite segment. This is where I ask our guests to be our resident expert witness for the day, our Mona Lisa Vito, so to speak. And of course, we finally have somebody from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Does It Hold Water? And so both my parents were from Brooklyn, for anybody who's watching. I don't think I've mentioned that. So,
Represent.
yeah, all right. So let's do it. I've got a good one for you. This isn't a direct quote. I put a couple of quotes together, thought leadership. You'll see stuff like this on LinkedIn all the time. Right up your alley. My guest does not know the question, but this is not going to surprise you. You ready? Assigning revenue targets to customer success managers is a necessary evolution. In today's market, if CS can't show a direct tie to revenue, it's a cost center waiting to be cut. Giving CSMs a number to hit doesn't undermine their role as trusted advisors, it strengthens it by aligning their work with business outcomes that matter most. Survival requires impact, and impact means revenue.
I'm one of the few CS leaders that you will hear disagree with that statement. And it's very controversial of me to do so. I understand why people say this because, again, fear and wanting to hold on to their job. But I would argue we are at a position now where I don't think anyone thinks that CS is the happiness department or that it's customer service. Like, we're all supposedly acting in these revenue roles. I haven't seen it being given a seat at the table. I haven't seen CS teams being respected more, held more, attributed the revenue that is from them. I don't see it helping. I think it is it's giving unrealistic expectations, especially the upsell. The upsell, because what that does is it takes your focus away from the customer's goals and puts it onto the company.
Right.
And of course, you should always be balancing the two, right? But I really think it shifts what CS is about. Selling can be a service, but if you have a quota, then you're going to be looking for times where it's not necessarily the right thing for the customer.
That's
and
right.
You're shooting yourself in the foot because even though you may be getting temporary revenue, if it's not right for the customer and it's not done at the right time, you're more likely to lose them. Right. And you can't, I've always believed in being responsible for attention. I am a fan of CSQLs, of, being like, these people are primed for it. I'll introduce the concept. These people are a good mix and match for it, so that sales is spending less time chasing down leads that wouldn't be good anyway. That has proven to be the most successful model in terms of revenue, that collaborative effort. But just turning them into account management, all I've seen with that is failure. I've seen CS getting chopped left and right. I see unrealistic expectations about what upsells are possible. And possibly the most important, none of these people are being trained how to sell. So you took people who didn't want to be in sales in the first place, even though that's where all the glory is. You pulled them out of what they wanted to do, which was help people, and be strategic. You pulled them off of that and said, go sell, which is like taking you should know how to do this. You work in this company, you work with this product, which is like taking someone from marketing and being like, go sit in the engineering department. Right. Well, we're all in tech. Mm-hmm. If people hate selling, mainly because they probably misunderstand it, but if they hate selling, you haven't trained them how to do it, and they never wanted to do it in the first place, you can't be super surprised when they suck at it. Just my opinion.
There's also, to me, you've hit on everything. I agree with everything you said, but just to kind of take it a step further, the element of trust. Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about trust in customers and clients, and we're talking more of B2B clients here than customers trusting you. And if you have that quota and that's what you're motivated by, you're risking that trust, and you're risking that entire relationship if you're starting to push for sales that aren't necessarily there. And again, I'll go back to great customer experiences are built by reminding them why they hired you in the first place,
Yeah.
not pushing, product at them. So
And they
it
say, cogs is the first to get cut. I'm sorry, we are cogs because we don't come in until after the sale has been made.
right.
And we're there to help make sure that they succeed with the product. So yeah, that does fall under cogs. Let's stop trying to be something that we're not,
Mm-hmm.
because we're not doing a good job at it.
Right.
And again, I'm going to make a lot of people really mad with that, but it's what I believe. And, the
That's
mental health of the people that I talk to every day is terrible,
oh no,
and I
yeah,
am able to teach them to survive and do well in this, uh, horrible environment that we're in.
mm-hmm.
But it's certainly not ideal. And it's certainly a lot more work than it should be, than it needs to be. Half of what they're getting, the thing that makes them able to learn all this is that, oh, this is happening to everyone else. I'm not crazy. I don't suck. I'm in a really bad environment. It's like being expected to hold your breath underwater for 30 minutes and then people calling you a failure when you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so just, it breaks my heart seeing the mental health of all of the current CS leaders. I see so many going back to being CSMs because they're like, this isn't doable and I'm out. I'm
Mm-hmm.
out.
That's
And
unfortunate. Yeah.
they're willing to make less money to not be abused.
Yeah. Oh God.
Hmm?
That's wow.
I've been saying this for years. People are starting to catch up to that.
There,
But
yeah,
it's been happening.
and I
Yeah.
think people are being more vocal about it, like you, and so I appreciate your candor here because I think it's important to get that viewpoint out. I think people, especially if I mean you're currently working, or you currently have, you're very obviously restricted in what you can and should say for your
Right,
own
of course. Like
well-being. So it's
I have the right to run my mouth because nobody else signs my paychecks.
that's what I'm
So
saying, right?
it helps. Yeah. No lie.
Which
People
is
are like, oh, you said it. I'm like, I will always say it, which is why I need to work for myself.
which is the power of podcasting and why
Yeah.
we all love it because
Yeah.
we're here to have this conversation. So thank you for that. I appreciate your candor with it.
A little bit of a rant there. Sorry about that.
No, that's what we're here for. Okay, it's time for chip shots. This is my kind of more short form questions, fun yet still professional questions. We go 3 or 4 time permitting. And we always start with the book question. I'm not even going to pretend I'm not going to ask this book question anymore. What is one book that has significantly influenced you? You're ready to go. Hit it.
One hurts me. One hurts me.
But you can get
Probably
multiple.
Probably Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, who
Mm-hmm.
I was so resistant to. People kept being like, you'd love Brene Brown. I'm like, too touchy feely. No, I had never read her stuff. And of course I read it. It was like, damn it. Like, I love you. I swear my undying loyalty. Yeah, Dare to Lead is absolutely brilliant. I have a whole like book section on Provan Success on my website of books that I recommend, both like leadership, customer success, psychology, that and, general in terms of leadership. I really like The Culture Code by Daniel Coyle, and I really like Crucial Conversations, um, which is, I mean, a life-changing book. I have an AI prompt now to like coach me like I'm doing a crucial conversation.
Oh, really?
Um,
Oh, good idea.
with this type of person to make sure that we can establish psychological safety. Here's how we reestablish if need be. It really fits into my philosophy of, treating people with respect, treating them as humans, as people who have good intentions. And it's worked. Yeah, it's made me stop being afraid of difficult conversations. And the shocking thing about it, I was like, oh, wait, this is how I have hard conversations in my private life. It never occurred to me you could do that. Oh, I guess that absolutely works. So there's more things this is why I say like, you have to lean into who you are. Cause you're not going to fool anyone anyway, but there's a lot that is already working for you in your real life that you can continue to use in relationships with people at work.
Yeah. Oh, that is interesting. Yeah, and I always tell the book people because they can't. They,
Yeah.
they they can't. So you've got a whole list. So we'll
Oh
refer
God, so
people
many.
to at the end. Obviously, we'll have you tell us
And
where we can
everything
find you.
that I recommend on there is also good on audiobook because I have not been able to sit and read a book since I had children.
Yeah.
Both a combination of like ADD, which I am actually diagnosed with, and the fact that if they see me with a book open, that is like a declaration of war. Like they can
Yeah.
tackle me.
Mom.
So these all work on audiobooks. You can run errands, you can be doing the dishes, you can be walking the dog, whatever, and still learning this stuff.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I still prefer the book, but at the same thing, I rarely have time to sit there with it. So I'm
It's just not
primarily
happening.
audio.
I've given up.
It should. I try, but it lasts
When they
about
go to college,
20
I'll read
minutes.
again.
When so I'm all over the audio too. But okay, this is gonna be. I'm dying to ask you this one. If you could spend a day shadowing a leader or professional in industry, who would it be, and what would you hope to learn?
Mm, I think that's it's tricky. Probably Simon Sinek, just because I agree with everything he says, but I want to see. Part of me just wants to see like how it looks in real life because I know my own philosophies, but I also know that I, like anyone else, am human and get triggered and don't follow my own advice sometimes. So I want to see how that works with him, and I want to talk to him about what he does about that because I feel like he's got it more nailed down than I do.
Hmm.
Um, you know, even if it's something like time management, I have the best time management strategies that I can give you, and I follow them 30% of the time, and I'm happy at that.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
part of it's reality, but yeah, he's just fascinating to me. And honestly, I'd just be like, talk at me, tell me everything you're doing.
yeah.
And I want to listen.
He's yeah. I don't know much about him. I know him, but I just somebody I've been trying to like. I
Very
gotta.
human first leadership, a lot of
Yeah,
psychology.
yeah. I think I'd enjoy it. That's why. And then I'm like, I just don't have time. Same thing. Time
Right.
management.
A lot of TED
But
Talks, a lot of
yeah.
TED Talks. So again, on the go,
So
he does podcasts. Um,
we
yeah.
got a time management book recommendation. I think it was episode 5, and I went out
Hmm.
and got it for me and my wife, and it's sitting up on the
Of
nightstand,
course
and
it
we
is.
haven't
Of course it is.
because we don't have time for the time management.
That's the first module I start with actually, because it's everyone's first objection is like, of course you don't have time because you don't know how to manage your time yet. So we
Time.
have to do that. My whole thing is like, time is fixed. It can't be managed. What we have to
Yes.
manage is what you say yes to.
Right.
Um, cause like, I think everything's mindset.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't realize my wife had the kind of the Sunday scaries going on, and she just was flipping out on Sundays, and
mhm.
I didn't realize it. And so I said, "All right, let's try to get a grasp
Yeah.
on this because the weekend goes so fast with 900 sports games and
Oh God,
practices
I
and all
know.
that and everything." So okay, so great one. I'm going to go back. I haven't asked the one habit or routine question in a bit, so I want to go back to that one. What's one habit or routine you've cultivated that contributes to your success, professional, personal, both?
Mm, honestly, and it's going to sound so self-promotional. It's really not, getting coaching, getting in programs. The minute I was unemployed, when I took my first one, it was $3,000. I almost threw up when I signed up, just because I was like, this
That's
is the most irresponsible thing I could possibly do. And it's what helped me start my business. And at this point, and this is going to sound so obnoxious, but like, I pay over $30,000 a year in coaching and masterminds.
wow.
Uh, and it's guaranteed. They're like, if you don't make this back, we will give it back to you. And never ever has it not doubled the return I put down. So at
Wow.
this point, it's like a broken slot machine. Like I know I put this much in and I get more out. So I'm going to do that, in
Wow.
investing in those things, because just relying on what is in my head, I am aware of how backwards and twisted it can get in there. And I will talk myself into a pretzel, and I need someone
To
to
help,
say
right?
to me, I think you're overcomplicating this.
Right.
Uh,
No, but it's true, right? I mean, with anything, and people, we don't get a lot of coaching with the mental aspect of anything. And my switch flipped, believe it or not. And I promised everybody I wasn't going to talk about golf on this podcast, but here I go again with golf.
yeah.
And the book, if I had a book to recommend, and I've said this I think once before, my book would be "Golf is Not a Game of Perfect."
Hmm.
And he also, Dr. Bob Rotella, he also wrote a book, a sequel to "Life is Not a Game of Perfect." But the whole
Mm.
point is, golf, you're never going to be perfect.
No.
Every pro hits bet. No one hits perfect shots, or everybody
Right.
shoot 56 or whatever it was every time, and no one ever. So the point is, the golf shots are going to be bad. You're going to hit bad ones. You've got to learn to deal with your misses and keep moving and understand you need to think of hitting the good shot and what is the positive mindset, right? Tiger
Hmm.
Woods doesn't go to the tee scared that there's water off on the left. He says,
Right.
okay, I got to hit a cut down the right side or whatever he says.
Yeah.
So he's laser focused on what he needs to do, understanding where the risk is. And what do? We sit there and we stare at the water and go, oh, I don't want to hit in the water.
Yeah.
And
I hit the
that's
water
for me.
before. I'm a failure. I'm going to hit the water every time. It's the fixed
that's all
versus
you're
growth
thinking of is the
mindset.
water.
Yeah.
Where's the ball going to go? The water. So it's the same thing. And that was to me when it went off in my head. Yeah.
And that is how the brain works. It focuses on the negative, again, to try and keep you safe. It will keep you alive, but it will not give you a very nice life.
That's right.
So you gotta have people who call you on that and show you the mistakes your brain is making. Right. And also just like having people who have successfully done what you are trying to do is the shortcut.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So no, that's great advice. I've had a number of coaches over the years, all fabulous. So highly, highly recommended. Okay, we got to wrap this up. I got to go with the advice question. I put an adjective in there. You're a podcast host. I got to ask you, what is the best piece of podcasting advice you've ever received, and how can it help any aspiring podcasters out there?
I mean, this is for me personally, a bullet outline, because I am not someone, I don't want to read from a script because I'll sound and feel less authentic. I want to know the general idea and just go off. But I'll have little points that I want to hit. So having that there without anything being a full sentence, I'll write the whole thing out and then just put the few words that'll keep me on topic. It's time consuming. It's a pain in the butt, but it's the only way that works for me because I do so many solo podcasts.
I was going to say, you do solo. You're talking solo. What you're going to,
yeah. And it's a mix. Finally, I get to the point where I'm like, I've been talking for 40 minutes and I have no idea what I'm saying anymore. So, Dylan, can you edit this out and just make it make sense somehow? Thank you. Bye. Yeah.
So, I've only had one solo. I think I'm going to do another one shortly. And I was worried that, what am I going to say for 20 to 30 minutes? And 56 minutes later, I had to edit it. So my solo episode 1, it started at 56 minutes. Oh my God. So,
I usually keep it to under 30, but there are a few that, that's from cutting. That's often from cutting because I'm like, all right, I'm starting to lose the plot now. The good stuff's probably over. Tell me what you need me to put in there. Like, I have an editor. He's fantastic. It's worth every penny, cause he's going to do it faster. I'm going to spend 7 hours trying to fix it. And it's just not worth it, I edit everything myself, and it is time consuming, but I've got a little bit of a pattern down now. And I've always done video editing because I do stuff for my golf stuff. So I already knew how to do that. And then I just added the audio. So it is a lot of work. The promos are a lot of work and all that stuff, but it's great fun, and I get to meet people like you. So it's for me, that's what I struggle with the interviews. The same thing. I want to be having the conversation and listening, but I don't want to be stuck. So I do have my questions prepared, but I don't always want to go to them. And then so that first few episodes, I felt like that very kind of robotic until I got into it. But it's been great. So speaking of it's been great, this has been great. What a great conversation! Yeah. This was great fun. You've been a great guest. I am so happy you joined us. Rachel Provan, tell everybody where they can find you because I know you're out there. I am. And it would be nice if you could find me, especially since LinkedIn has been hiding my content a lot.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Everybody's, not just mine. Everybody, not just mine. You can find me on provansuccess.com. Provan, like my last name, kind of like proven success. Yeah, it's a pun. Deal with it. I like a dad joke. So provansuccess.com. There you can sign up for my newsletter. I have a weekly newsletter that gives leadership tips backed by psychology. I do post on LinkedIn. And you can also find me on Psychology of Customer Success podcast.
Awesome. Please look for Rachel. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll be back with more CX leaders, customer success leaders, and oh my God, maybe even another solo episode soon. Thank you for joining Your Customer Success. Bye for now.
Bye.
That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to marracxhub.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Marra, working hard for your customer and your success.